And you want to start to build a relationship with these, not just as abstract ideas or things that you say that you're supposed to say. And especially in a space like this, where we have room to explore and self-express. You put ideas out and you're not worried about only saying the right thing or inhibiting yourself from speaking because you're worried about saying the wrong thing. But you can start to think about what you think about in a space that affords you an opportunity to not be confined by these realities, which religious communities quite often create. Very front-facing lecture. My job here is not to tell you what I anecdotally experience and then say my life is going to be what your life is going to be. But for us together to equip ourselves with a certain support mechanism that enables us now to take on some of these challenges, but to also put a positive frame to our relationship with our own selves, with each other, and with God. I think what Paula is saying that's really key, we want to have fulfillment. You want to be in a space where you have balance, you have contentment. And the idea of understanding what contentment is, it's not the absence of sadness, it's not the absence of human emotion, right? Because the Prophet ﷺ is the most balanced individual ever created. And he has entire years of his life that are qualified by a state of emotional angst. Amal Huzn, a year of sadness, a year of grief, which he loses his wife Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, he loses his uncle Abu Talib, he goes through real difficulty. It's hard for him. But the ability to now be in a space that makes this connection, your heart fundamentally, you have to think about this in two frames. One, it doesn't need for you to buy into the idea that as a part of you, it is a key ingredient in the pursuit of contentment. ألا وإن في الجسد مضغة إذا صلحت صلح الجسد كله وإذا فسدت فسد الجسد كله ألا وهي القلب. The Prophet ﷺ says that indeed in your jasad, your physical body, there's a morsel of flesh. If it's good, then all of it's good. If it's not good, then all of it is not good. Indeed, it's your heart. There's certain things that one can understand as absolutes. The sky is blue. You can't argue that. If you argue it, it's probably something wrong with just perspective. Grass is green. In theology, we have certain absolutes that we embrace. God is one. This is something that's fundamental in Islamic theology. There's other things that exist now in spiritual levels. And to be able to understand that God's oneness does not need for us to recognize God's oneness in order for it to be true. The sky does not need for you to know that it's blue in order for it to be blue. The grass does not need for you to believe that it's green in order for it to be green. You don't have to think or embrace the idea that the heart plays a pivotal role in your cognition as well as your sense of balance and contentment in order for it to play that role functionally in your being. But the second frame that you want to think about this, after you understand that it's not about whether you're aware of it or not for it to play that role, if you embrace it, it's going to enhance its ability to do that. That if you can actually separate those things you're talking about, the distractions, the minutiae, the supposed to's of chasing after materialistic existence, because most of you pursue what you pursue, whether you're conscious of it or not, in chasing after this thing of fulfillment. And you live in a consumer-driven society that seeks to sell you an idea that your purchasing of what it is advertising to you is going to render happiness only upon consumption of it. But it also seeks to get you dissatisfied with what it is that you already have. So it's not that we're greedy people that sit in chairs and kind of twirl our fingers in a Scrooge type mentality, but you want to think about it in the sense of dissatisfaction, an absence of fulfillment, a very purposeful agenda that seeks to have me believe that the amount of wealth that I have, the job title that I have, the degrees that I have, the companionship that I have, whether I have a ring on my finger or not, whether I have children or not, I'm not saying it's easy. It's difficult. I got married when I was about to turn 29 years old. My wife was 32. And prior to that, the nature of my work, I travel a lot and speak in a lot of different places. I used to get invited to speak at a lot of things where my topic was, what is it like to be a single Muslim? And it was like a salt on your wounds type thing. Everybody knew I wasn't married. I remember one session that I was speaking at a conference. There was a woman on the panel with me who was telling everybody in the audience that you need to be so happy that you're not married, and it's like liberation from what it's like to be married. You don't have all this freedom anymore, and whatever else she was saying. I got on the mic and I said, I'm sorry, but that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Aside from the fact that it's so hard to be lonely, loneliness is said to be the equivalent of what it does to your body. Loneliness is like you're smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's what it does to your body statistically. And then you get to a space where everybody is always in your face. Don't you want to get married? Like, no, I don't. That's why it's not happening. Only if I wanted to, then it would work out. Aren't you in a place where you're trying? Yeah, I'm just sitting and doing nothing. But it's a constant theme, a constant mode. And we put now in this a recognition that says a lot of what we pursue is pursuant of this idea that X will yield Y that will then give me this sense of fulfillment. But what Islam posits is that fulfillment is not based off of anything that exists external to you. The true richness is not having an abundance of things of the earth, but true richness is having a richness of your soul, says the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Ali radiallahu anh, he says detachment isn't to not own anything of the world, but detachment is to not have anything of the world own you. That you are in possession of your possessions. Your possessions don't possess you. And you're not in a space now where your sense of self is attached to things that exist external. And so what this tradition teaches its practitioner is that pay attention to your heart. Because when it becomes sovereign, it becomes now the place where you can deal with the struggles of life. When you're feeling down because you lost a loved one, when a relationship did not work out, when you're trying to make sense of things that are difficult in your life, exams are failed, jobs are not given, engagements broke off, marriages end in divorce, family members are mistreating you, the product that you buy is not going to bring you balance. The fancy car is not going to be there to give you a sense of solace. The ability to weather the storm, so to speak, now comes not from things outward, but things inward. And this construct of reclaiming means that somebody else has control of it now. Something else is holding on to my attentiveness. Something else is in a space where it's pulling me in different directions. In a gathering like this, the challenge is being able to identify what the multitude of things could be that are now in a place that we are subservient to and succumbing to. In the Quran, it poses a question, that do you see the one who takes his hawa, his desire, as being his God, his Lord? That fundamentally you are in worship of something. Again, whether you are conscious of it or not is a different story. But to turn on the mode of awareness that now starts to say, what is really the direction of my Qibla? What do I focus the attentiveness of my entire being towards? As people right now make tawaf of the Kaaba, replicating a motion that exists on an angelic level, that is gone now on for time immortal. What am I making tawaf of every day? What has me running around in circles? The beauty of the gift that is Ramadan, the madrasa, the school that is the month of mercy, the month of Quran, the month of fasting, is to now reharness the ability to self-regulate to take control of what was now taken elsewhere. And you didn't necessarily give it on your own volition, but it's not necessarily something that you have to give permission for somebody to take. But you can consciously bring it back in and bring deep intention and perspective to the decisions you decide upon and the choices that you are choosing. What gets in the way? What makes it hard? The heart is an organ of cognition. You have now organs of sensory perception. The eyes you see with, the ears that you hear with, the hands you touch with, the tongues you taste with, even the minds that you think with. They play a critical role in discerning meaning, but you have opportunity to filter it through a prism of a heart that is awake or a heart that's in slumber. A heart that is hard or a heart that is soft. A heart that is sovereign or a heart that is submissive. And that choice is going to be your choice. It requires embracing another perspective that says contentment, happiness is not rooted in disposition. It's not just simply innate. Do you believe that fulfillment is something that is just part of your fitrah, in the sense that you have no control over certain things? Or in contrast to a disposition, is contentment a decision? Is it a choice? And it's hard when the world gets heavy to be able to say that I still play a role decisively in choosing perspective, in choosing happiness, in choosing contentment. Now, I want you to think about this as a frame of this conversation as we go deeper into some of these things. Just think about how this world functions and think about what the role of wealth is and wealth acquisition is in the course of the world. The way your mind functions is that it has now implicit within it a negative cognitive bias. You're going to see more so what is not there than what is there. That's just how it functions. And you have opportunity to right now synthesize millions of pieces of information that are coming at you. You can be listening to me. You can be thinking about somebody else in the room. You can be looking at what's going outside in the window. You can be thinking about somebody doing something in a corner. You can be absorbing so much that's going on all around you. It's not possible for your mind to take every single piece of information that is surrounding you at this moment and to absorb all of it critically. Can you do it? No, you can't. So what ends up happening as now information is being thrown at you, your mind is choosing through its own socialization, through the manner in which you have given priority to certain pieces of information and not other pieces of information. Whether you did it consciously or not is a different story, but how you were brought up, how you were reared, whether people told you they love you or not, they told you they were proud of you or not, they gave more deference to your mistakes in the sense of pointing out inadequacies or not. These types of things become now filters for the information as we are absorbing it within us. And that negative bias that's there, it becomes now something that feeds the nafs at the expense of the heart. If any of you have ever had an evaluation of some kind at work, has anybody had a job evaluation before? Is it enjoyable? No. Anybody have a job evaluation of any kind? Do you like it? No. Yeah, it's weird, right? Now you can sit down. If you worked for me and I sat down with you and we had this conversation and I said, here's 1,000 things that you do great. I said, here's some stuff you can improve upon. You're going to walk away more likely than not, the average person, not remembering anything of the good, but your mind is going to get fixated to the part that was critical, And most of us, because of this negative bias, are not going to take that criticism with a growth mindset, but with one that pushes us further down in a place of turmoil. Statistically, the impact that comes from a negative setback is twice as powerful as the impact from an achievement. If you ever lose money, it rocks your world in comparison to making the money, the impact that it has. You lose your wallet, you get thrown into a frenzy. You have money in stocks, throws your mind upside down. You get to a place where it's not on your own volition, giving of charity. And think about this also, because this is where love, mahabba, is an important catalyst because it comes from the heart, right? And when you're giving now as a spiritual act, that's not in a space where it's difficult to let it go. It's hard. And it's part of this negative bias that we have cognitively. That if I give you a compliment, it's not going to be as impactful as if I give you a critique. We filter it differently. It stays within us. Our spiritual tradition can embed this now in just the tactics of shaitan. May Allah protect us from his waswasa, who in his own role, in an Adamic narrative of creation, interjects now not simply an act of arrogance, an act of racism, an act of flawed logic when he refuses to be in a space of submission to Allah's command of prostrating to Adam, peace be upon him, but he's also interjecting now a deficient perspective. He doesn't see it the way that it's meant to be seen. And that recognition is critical to understand in this idea of reclaiming your heart. Because what Iblis is given now is opportunity to have us double down and commit the act that had him kicked out of Jannah in the first place. And again, it doesn't need for you to believe in it in order for it to be true. And one of the hardest things that we overcome is the reality that all of us are in a space where we can fall to shaitan's waswasa. May Allah protect us from it. And if you're not aware to it, then you're not awoke to the idea that he's going to get you where you're most vulnerable, not where somebody else is vulnerable. And Ramadan gives us an opportunity now to remove waswasa and to see with clarity what's coming from the nafs versus what's coming from shaitan. And so you become conscious of this, that negative bias. It exists now at the level of thought, what we call ANT's automatic negative thoughts. You think 12,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day. 80% of those are negative in their base, 4 out of 5. 96% are repeat. You're compounding it again and again and again. 96% also means that 4% of your thought process is not repeat, meaning 4% is conscious in comparison to what's just happening. Because each one of us thinks. Right now, you're thinking something. The idea is not to simply think because everybody thinks. The idea is to reclaim the ability to choose what you think about and how you think about the things that you think about. And so you don't root it in what is now just most again apparent or simplistic or success based off of a worldly sense, but you have a treasure in your heart that you're saying, what am I really giving it up for each and every day? That choice now, that decision to choose contentment, to choose happiness, necessitates understanding the intrinsic link between thought and action. Because people will just say to you, why don't you just think positively? That's almost as dumb as being like, don't you just want to get married? What's the problem? Sometimes you want to tell people, it doesn't make sense what you're saying. It's not that easy. What our tradition affords to us now is a recognition that actions can also be a means to positivity. كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. The action of fasting, right? It's written for you. In the Quran, when you have certain words that are utilized from the standpoint of how we derive law, certain words now denote obligation. So kutiba is saying it's written for you. You have that word or a derivative, usually now it's going to become a basis of saying, this is something you have to do. And it sets the norm, and then it carves out exceptions to it, right? You also have words like ala, for example. If ala is used quite often, it's giving an indication that this is talking about something that evidentiary will be now an obligation. And so here, fasting, it's an act. It's a passive act. It's not about engagement in the sense of go run a lap around Washington Square Park, but in the inaction, there's an activity that's there, right? You're stilling your hand from the food. You're abstaining from the drink. And it gives now a root connection to something that is an aspect of cognition. Taqwa, la'allakum tattaqun. So the act becomes the means to harnessing control inwardly. What does this mean? If I said to you right now, stop thinking, could you do it? If I said, just stop thinking negatively, is it that easy? It's much easier if I said to everybody, stand up right now. All of you can get yourself to stand up. Some of us, it's important to understand, it's not always that simple because of wellness conditions that we might have, and recognizing that this is a generalization, but still a generalization that comparatively between just limiting to positive thought, you now complement positive thought with positive action. And the two go hand in hand in this idea of reclaiming one's heart. And the Quran is filled with this. In terms of ritual practice, the salah is a means of protection from that which is fahsha and munkar, things that are not good for you. So too, though, it speaks about the importance beyond ritual, not in a place that you leave it behind, but incorporating it and then understanding in addition to it, when it talks to you about treating orphans well, when it talks to you about being gentle and compassionate, when it emphasizes acts of kindness and beauty, al-jaza al-ihsani ila al-ihsan, that is the reward of goodness, beauty, ihsan. Anything other than ihsan, it perpetuates itself. You do an act of kindness, you engage in an act of beauty, it's going to now replicate and build more and build more and build more. And this is where you have the ability to understand that contentment is not just about disposition. Contentment is about decision. You can choose it, but you have to do what is necessary from both the aspect of what exists in your mind as well as what the rest of your body is now being commanded towards. And it's 10 times harder to exert mental strength in that way that says, I'm just not going to think about what's causing me pain. What are you talking about? If you get sick, a loved one passes away, the most human response is to be in a place where you acknowledge anger, sadness, grief. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what is the hardest day in your life? He doesn't say, yeah, Aisha, we don't have hardness in our life. There's nothing difficult. But she asks, and he says, Taif. Taif is the hardest day in his life. Taif comes at the end point of losing his wife, Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, losing Abu Talib, being in a place where he has seen his companions persecuted, boycotted, beaten, even killed for following a tradition and a way of life that he's telling them will give you good in this world and in the next. And at Taif, he's in a space now where he thinks people will bring him in. He has expectation. The same way you think that relationship is going to turn to marriage and you envision something now. Our prophet thought he was going to a place that ended up being different from what it actually was. And he gets there and it's not with no assumptions. He thinks people are going to bring them in. That's why he went in the first place. He didn't go to Taif saying, maybe these people are going to mistreat me. And now when he's there, the impact comes and the chieftains command the children, the servant to run him out. It's not for minutes. This is for long periods of time. He leaves from that place saying to Allah, have you forsaken me? When he comes now to the outskirts of the city, the angel of the mountains comes. Ya Muhammad, I'm the angel of the mountains. If you command me to do so, I will crush these people. He doesn't speak words of retribution or words of vengeance. Yes, go and take care of them. Who are they to treat me like this? His emotional recovery time is remarkable. And so immediately he goes to his default setting, which is to be a mercy to the world, and says, no, let them be. Perhaps the generations that come after, they will understand. This is crazy to think about, because who were the ones that ran him out of the town? Wasn't the chieftains, it was the children and the servants. And who is he telling the angel to give a chance to? The children. The ones that are younger, the ones that are going to grow up. If you're from the Indian subcontinent, Islam was brought to Sindh from the people of Taif. And that foresight that comes now from the Prophet's recovery time is rooted in exactly what we're talking about in this moment. It's not going to come from pretending like things are not hard. Things are going to be hard. I wish they weren't. I wish there was something I could say to you that says, here's how you can ensure you will never feel pain. That's not the point of it. The point is to be able to self-regulate, to be patient with yourself, to have kindness. And so you now pair with the idea of positive thought, the importance of positive action, the actions that are going to yield to you now an opportunity for inward understandings of growth. So when you engage in spiritual practice like dhikr, you attach meaning to it so that gratitude is a verb. It's not just something that you conceptualize, but you sit and you think about it. You say, Alhamdulillah, for what? And then you attach meaning and reason to it. The act is necessary to influence the thought. It doesn't dismiss the difficult realities. That's not the point of it. The point of the positive act in conjunction with the positive thought, but also a means to increase the positive thought, is that if what's ahead of me is the obstacle, that positive act that renders positive thinking is going to now not say that the obstacle is not there, but it's going to be a vision modifier in terms of how I understand how to overcome the obstacle. Do you see the difference? It's a foolish notion to say that we don't acknowledge hardship. If you can't acknowledge hardship, then you're not going to dig deep to find what it is that's within you to overcome it. You want to be able to verbalize in the prism of reality so that you can then find the resources needed to get to that space of overcoming. This all goes into reclaiming your heart, to be in a space that understands you in your entirety as a self, and to get to it. I'm going to probably talk about this more in a later halaqah, but I want you to think about this just fundamentally. How many times a day do you say to God, Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim? How many times? Or how many times do we theoretically say it? You might say it 1,000,000 times, right? A lot. Let's just say it's a lot, not to waste time getting to Maghrib time. We say this every rak'ah of every prayer. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. The grammar here is not like pointed out to me, but there's more of a sense of adoration there and nurture. Like guide me to it. Walk with me hand in hand. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. Why are you asking God to show you where the straight path is if you're not going to walk on it after he showed you what it was? What's the point of knowing that kindness is an important vehicle to traverse this earthly existence upon? What's the point of knowing that integrity is a sound mechanism to be able to engage others with etiquette? What's the point of knowing that beauty is not just about what supremacy tells us? There's a lot of us in this room. Nobody like us is going to get on a billboard. And that's not because you're not beautiful, but that goes back to the consumer-driven society trying to make you dissatisfied with what actually makes you beautiful. And you got to put that down and say, I'm beautiful because Allah told me He made me beautiful. You're going to ask Allah, Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim, guide me to the straight path. Then get to a space where you're willing to walk it after He shows it to you. Do we have people move up here? If we can make room so people can pray on the sides here. I don't know why this whole part of the room is empty, but you can come over. You guys can move in too. Unless you don't like people, that's fine. But feel free to please come in close. What we try to do is that when we're in this room, have us more centered so that people can use the front parts of the spaces for prayer. Do you get what I'm saying? You're literally asking for it every single time you pray. Every single time you pray, you are asking for an opportunity to be somebody who makes moves. Sharia, a path to water. Sira is a path. Tariqa is a path. All of it's about movement. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. Guide me to a path that's straight. You are not meant to be somebody who only knows something. In Arabic, there's relations in language. It's a beautiful, deep language. Words that share common root letters, they have a shared kind of thread of meaning. Islam, Muslim, Salam, all has the root salama. You can see the root there and how it's connected. You also have in Arabic a concept that if words have the same letters, not in order, but still out of order, there's a relation. So ilm, Ain Lam Mim, has the same root as amal, Ain Mim Lam, which means to act. Ilm is knowledge, amal is action. Amal is different from a fa'il. A fa'il is something that you do without consciousness. It's just done. You blink your eyes. What a mercy from God that you don't have to think every time you blink or every time you breathe. Can you imagine what your life would be like? I'm going to blink now. I'm going to blink now. Now I'm going to breathe. What would that be like? That's what a fa'il is. It doesn't necessitate presence of mind. And amal is different. Innama al-a'malu bin-niyat. It links it. It has presence, consciousness. That's what makes it distinct. And so there's a relationship between knowing and acting. You don't want to be somebody who knows something and then doesn't act upon it. What's the point of knowing that kindness is good and you're not kind? What's the point of knowing that lying is bad, but you still lie? What's the point of knowing that service, charity, compassion, these are all vehicles for inward transformation? Forget about the beneficiary, the recipient on the other end, but thinking for yourself. Who needs to explain to you that this is something now in your adult existence that you have a choice in doing? And when you can embrace the idea that that's your choice, then you can make the connection that contentment is also not rooted in disposition, but there is decisiveness that is there. You can choose fulfillment. You can choose happiness. You can choose contentment. You just have to choose the actions that are going to build up your inside in a way, and you got to stop doing the things that just put Band-Aids on what's going on. I'm turning 40 years old this year. I don't know if I look like it. I did some lectures today for new students admitted to NYU, the class of 2026. I graduated from NYU in 2004. Some of you graduated from college around the same time as me. Some of you are older than me. to make you feel miserable the way I feel miserable. Students who are first year in NYU this year, they were born in the year I graduated college. I met some kids today. They had professors from the university talk to incoming students to give them a taste. So aside from what I do at the IC, I also teach some courses on leadership in our School of Public Policy here. So I'm talking to these kids. There's all these happy kids from the class of 26 walking around. And one kid sees me with my backpack on. I guess I don't dress like an adult, and I'm also the size of a very small human being. He said, "Aren't you excited to be here? We're going to be at NYU." I was like, "Man, I'm 40 years old." He's like, "Whoa, you're 40 and you're going to college? Good for you." I was like, "You are not understanding what I'm saying." Understand and recognize that where you're at is not necessarily where you have to be. And we are in a space where when some of us were younger, the kind of things that we purchased, they were built with a different sense of durability to them. Literally what you buy each and every day is meant outwardly to be something that falls apart. And inwardly, your heart now loses as your nafs is in a place where you're not satisfied with it anymore. I take my kids to get ice cream quite often. We go to Baskin Robbins. It's got 100 flavors to it. It's built purposely to make them doubt that what they end up with is something that they should have gotten. Many of you have met my children. One's 6 now, the other's 9. They're beautiful. Make dua for them. The greatest blessings in my life. When I take my kids to get ice cream, they're going to, at the end of it, still get vanilla ice cream. But they're going to look at every single one. Baba, are you going to get this? Didi, do you want this? Karimi, do you want this? And as they're eating it, they're in a space where it tastes fine, but then fundamentally they're going to leave and they're going to say, maybe next time I'll try this other one. Because it's built to have them not enjoy what's right in front of them and to always wonder, is something else better? That's what some of you do when you're trying to choose a spouse for yourself. You end up in a space where you pass out on amazing individuals because supremacist society makes you dissatisfied. That's what happens when you're choosing friends for yourself. You're constantly chasing after the supposed tos, and you don't recognize the person sitting next to you is likely the one that's going to create for you the most deep opportunity for contentment and solid companionship. You put your faith in the purchase of things. I'm going to buy the same phone that did the same thing that I bought last time and spend money that I don't have because somehow I believe it's going to give me fulfillment. If it gave you fulfillment, why do you need the next one? And the one after that, and the one after that. But think about it. Think about it. Use your head. Don't go on default settings. Use your heart. What are you working towards? And this is what whiteness wants. It wants you to idolize the self and to become subservient to it. It's the modern day shirk. Idolatry in its ugliest forms. Feed the nafs, feed the nafs, feed the nafs. At the expense of everything else. What Ramadan is about, it's about making decisions through your heart, not at their expense. It's about recognizing that at the end of the day, I don't really need a lot of things per se. What I'm looking for is not an outward experience, it's an inward experience. The last minute that we have before Maghrib comes in, I want to give you practical things to help with this. 1, make good friends. And be a good friend to other people. It's going to impact your heart. All day, if you're in the setting and surrounding of people who only bring you close to where they are and accept you when you become that which you are not, that's not a setting you want to expose your heart to. Some of you have been here every night of Ramadan. Some of you have been here a few nights. Some of you are going to experience gatherings purposely for this month Don't stop engaging them when the month is over and then wonder, why do I feel like my world is turned upside down? Be in a place where you venture into building friendships and relationships with others. But this is going to be a key safeguard to the development of your inside, to have people that you can meet with regularly, that you just get to talk to and engage. It is stupid, the reasons that you give up on relationships. I feel weird being the one to reach out. If somebody really wanted to talk to me, they would reach out to me. That's dumb. Your heart deserves more. You know somebody's a good friend, don't lose touch and don't let work get in the way. 2, after friendship, practice gratitude, and not in a way where that's not substantive, but you have to deliberately be in a place where you can acknowledge what you have in front of you, because this society wants the money in your pockets to go towards what it is that they're selling you. My 9-year-old daughter, we don't have a regular TV in our house. We have Amazon and Hulu and Netflix, and commercials don't really come up for the most part. We go on vacation, we watch regular TV, commercials pop up. My daughter, who's 9 now, she sees some of these. My 6-year-old son, he has no idea what's going on. He's smiling, Baba, can I get that? Can I get this? I'm like, no, man, you are not gonna get like an Audi. You're 6 years old. What are you talking about? My daughter will look at it and she'll say, Baba, what does this commercial have anything to do with what they're telling us to buy? I'll be like, half the time it has nothing to do with it. There's a reason why you don't see sad looking people eating food on commercials. They're always happy and look like they're having a fun time because they're trying to tell you that come and eat this pizza is going to make your world turn upside down. So you don't want to put that trust in just product placement, but you sit sometimes and you disrupt the dissatisfaction by finding satisfaction in what it is that you actually have. And that's what the Prophet says when he tells us to sit at the end of the prayer. You say, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, attach reasons to it. It'll transform your inside if you yield to the process over time, and it'll enable you to see the world differently, limiting that negative cognitive bias we talked about, and the pieces of information will filter differently. So now when you see somebody, you're not going to see them simply based off of where they might be inadequate or lacking or any of these things, including yourself. You won't look in the mirror and say, this is where I'm not good. But you'll be able to use these things as mechanisms to start enhancing the experience. And so friendship, gratitude, practice stillness, reflection, contemplation. And then the 4th thing I'll say, and then we'll call the adhan, you want to read the Quran not as a book that is just something that goes in one ear and out the other. But these are eternal words of guidance that are meant to be practiced. There's very few verses that are legalistic, do's and don'ts. There's a lot of counsels that are just a philosophy on life that teach us about ethics and values and root things in actions. Pick up the book and read it, and don't be scared. It was given for your benefit. And then its admonitions and counsels, act upon them. This is the connection. Positive thought to positive action is going to render inward balance. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to be the ones that are in control of our hearts. We're not going to have to chase after simplistic band-aids of complacency, but we'll be, inshallah, people of real rida, real contentment. Allahu ta'ala alam, wa billahi tawfiq. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.